Well, my disease persists, but I have at least one nostril clear, and damn it, that's good enough for me. So thanks for bearing with some vocal strain, because there's a topic left over from last week I'd be remiss to leave unaddressed. Within the last week, we have heard two drastically different visions for free speech on the internet from two of the world's most powerful men, or at least a guy who was, and at minimum remains, hugely influential. Of course, this week the deal for the world's richest man to acquire Twitter is finalizing, and whatever you may think of Elon Musk's fortune and power, he is consistently expressing a vision for speech on the platform that distinguishes on none of those characteristics. If you have something to say, you should be able to say it.
You've described yourself, Elon, as a free speech absolutist.
The truth matters to me a lot. Really, sort of pathologically, it matters to me. A good sign as to whether there is free speech is someone you don't like allowed to say something you don't like. And if that is the case, then we have free speech. And it's damn annoying when someone you don't like says something you don't like. That is a sign of a healthy, functioning, free speech situation.
And it's a clear philosophy. The truth is of value for its own sake, and the most reliable method to acquire truth is through the battle of ideas that is free speech. If we value truth above everything, we must value its pursuit above everything, which means it's a value that extends to people we despise, saying things we despise, because the truth is of higher value than our own personal distaste, no matter how bitter they may be. That's one path that's available to us. Whether Elon is completely sincere and committed, and whether he's able to actualize it, remains to be seen. And even though this path is well worn in American history and American political thought, it's actually bushwhacking on many parts of the internet, or at least a path we've long abandoned, because Elon's path is a near directional opposite from the path that we have been taking, and the path offered by former President Obama last week. And maybe offered is the wrong word, because it's not anything new. It's a years-long status quo. And there's actually very little offered about it. It's more of a philosophy imposed than a philosophy chosen. Obama took a Stanford University stage Thursday to say that, Elon opposite, there hasn't been too much tech censorship. In fact, there's been too little. And to reach a democratic utopia where every voice matters, we got to crack down on the voices that don't. And even if you think I've unfairly characterized that contradiction, you don't have to rely on my description. Obama provides them himself. The speech is an absolute mess of impossible contradictions. We should head north by walking south. We should illuminate with darkness. We should expand information by constricting information. State a commitment to principle, then insert a gigantic Kardashian but, and then explain how you don't actually believe in that principle at all. That was the formula for Obama's entire speech. Describe how something is good in concept, but then explain how in practice we should do the complete opposite. But don't worry, because when I do bad stuff, I have good stuff in mind. That's the apparent reasoning. Even though Obama concludes the exact opposite of Musk, he does claim the same philosophical title. He too is a free speech absolutist, or at least a First Amendment one.
I'm pretty close to a First Amendment absolutist. I believe that in most instances, the answer to bad speech is good speech.
Depends on your definition of pretty close, I guess. He was also pretty close to a due process absolutist, except for when he wasn't. But even if you grant a few exceptions as necessary, it's still pretty odd for a speech from an absolutist to focus on all the many exceptions rather than the rule. If free speech is a general value, Obama discussed very little of its benefit. Instead, he focused almost exclusively on its supposed risks and negative consequences, except, of course, for the personal benefit. He did mention that. Obama reminisced about the good old days of free speech on social media when it was helping him get elected.
I might never have been elected president if it hadn't been for websites like, and I'm dating myself, MySpace, Meetup, and Facebook that allowed an army of young volunteers to organize, raise money, spread our message. That's what elected me.
So even though there were less restrictions on social media back then, it still achieved better results, according to his own description. Yet for the rest of the speech, we hear the exact opposite. We need more restriction to achieve better results. It sounds incoherent because it is. Obama never actually explains what value he finds in free speech other than its service to him and stuff he likes. He explains with platitude, not principle.
Here's what I think our guiding principle should be. The way I'm going to evaluate any proposal touching on social media and the internet is whether it strengthens or weakens the prospects for a healthy, inclusive democracy. Whatever changes contribute to that vision, I'm for. Whatever erodes that vision, I'm against. Just so you know.
Yeah, in simpler words, stuff I like, I am for. And stuff I don't, I'm against. And we're supposed to consider that some sort of profound statement. The only thing that's clear in that description is that speech is not the actual value. Stuff I like is. And speech should only be tolerated to the extent that it serves my personal purpose, not for its own sake. To start his long tour of I'm for free speech buts, Obama makes the classic stop at, hey guys, the First Amendment only restricts the government, you know.
The First Amendment is a check on the power of the state. It doesn't apply to private companies like Facebook or Twitter.
Well, is the First Amendment a philosophy? Or is it just a legal technicality? Because only a minute prior, he said the First Amendment is first for a reason.
Freedom of speech is at the heart of every democratic society. In America, those protections are enshrined in the First Amendment to our Constitution. There's a reason it came first in the Bill of Rights.
Right. There is a reason, and that reason pre-exists the legal articulation. So why would you disregard or trash that reason by saying that the First Amendment is just some legal text and nothing more? Apply this logic to any other constitutional protection. Is due process and a presumption of innocence just a legal technicality, or is there some sort of inherent underlying value to assessing evidence before assigning guilt, as valuable in our personal interactions as it is in our relationship with government? Is security against unreasonable search and seizure just a legal technicality, or is there some sort of inherent underlying value to protecting our property rights from unwarranted intrusion, just as valuable against the burglar as it is against the police agent? If it's wrong for government to censor you, why? There must be some underlying moral truth that would make it wrong for a mob of your neighbors to do it too. But Obama never explains what makes it okay for the mob, but not for the government. And regardless, he's not even consistent on his claim that it'd be wrong for the government anyway. He outright calls for government regulation of speech.
So a regulatory structure, a smart one, needs to be in place. We need to consider reforms to Section 230 to account for those changes, including whether platforms should be required to have a higher standard of care. If Congress is too polarized to pass anything, we probably won't make the kind of progress we need.
He's a big First Amendment absolutist, except, of course, for the first 5 words. Much of the speech Obama spends condemning authoritarian foreign leaders for using social media as a tool to control their people.
No democratic government can or should do what China, for example, is doing, simply telling people what they can and cannot say or publish while trying to control what others say about their country abroad. Authoritarian regimes and strongmen around the world, from China to Hungary, the Philippines, have learned to conscript social media platforms to turn their own populations against groups they don't like.
Hungary is an authoritarian regime now. I guess someone should tell the EU about that. But regardless, if information control is to authoritarian benefit, why are we prescribing information control as the path to freedom? Now, in fairness, he's also saying that these regimes propagandize on social media to achieve their ends. But what's the remedy for propaganda? It's dissent. Not according to me, but according to him.
We've all witnessed the ways that activists use social media platforms to register dissent and shine a light on injustice and mobilize people on issues like climate change and racial justice. And the last couple of months have also shown what can happen when the world pushes back. We've seen it in an IT army of volunteers who work to break through Russia propaganda and reach out to mothers of Russian soldiers, asking them to call on Putin to bring their sons home.
But if dissent is of democratizing value, then why is he warning us about the dangers of certain forms of dissent that he doesn't like? Things he calls conspiracy theories or hate speech or other items on his long list of free speech exceptions that he said was very short.
Search and social media platforms aren't just our window into the internet. They serve as our primary source of news and information. No one tells us that the window is blurred, subject to unseen distortions. Useful, factual information flow alongside lies, conspiracy theories, junk science, quackery, white supremacist racist tracts, misogynist screeds.
Implicitly, then, dissent is not of value for its own sake. Dissent is only of value when it challenges falsehood. And perhaps we might wonder, well, how do we know falsehood without dissent? And I agree, but that's not a rebuttal to Obama. That's a rebuttal from Obama against himself 15 minutes later.
None of us are perfectly objective. What we consider an unshakable truth today may prove to be totally wrong tomorrow.
Correct. And the inverse is also true. What we consider to be a conspiracy theory or a complete falsehood today may prove to be totally true tomorrow. And how else do we find out other than protecting our right to challenge conventional wisdom? Is truth decreed or is it discovered? If we agree that it's discovered, you don't take away the shovels that dig for it, and you don't diminish the right to dig. But that's another contradiction. Obama insists he wants us to be good diggers. He says it's crucial for all of us to develop and maintain critical thinking skills to evaluate information for ourselves and thus to find the truth.
Over time, we lose our capacity to distinguish between fact, opinion, and wholesale fiction. As citizens, we have to take it upon ourselves to become better consumers of news, looking at sources, thinking before we share, and teaching our kids to become critical thinkers who know how to evaluate sources and separate opinion from fact.
Okay, but if it's imperative that we all think critically, why don't you trust us to think critically? And how do we develop that skill if not for the freedom to practice it? You guys really need to learn to evaluate information, but also there's a lot of information you shouldn't be allowed to evaluate. It's like saying you should learn to drive, but only in a self-driving car. You really should stay in shape, but count on the authorities to diet and exercise for you. After all, you're way too fat and stupid to do that stuff for yourself. Achieve independence by embracing dependence. There are much simpler ways to say, I think you're a moron, so just shut the hell up and do as I tell you. And doing as he tells you is, in fact, the highest value of this speech. For all the contradiction and incoherence and logical slop, every argument leads straight back to Obama is smarter than you, Obama is better than you, so just do as he says to achieve utopia. And of course, the best mechanism to enforce that is what he calls our greatest gift in closing, government.
And I believe we should use every tool at our disposal to secure our greatest gift, a government of, by, for the people, for generations to come. And I hope you agree with me, and I look forward to you joining in the work.
I hope that you'll agree with me, because if you don't, I'll force you to agree with me. And I get it. He's not saying that government in general is our greatest gift. He's saying specifically that government of, by, and for the people is our greatest gift. But even that is incorrect. Government is only valuable to the extent that it secures our actual greatest gift, our natural rights. Government of, by, and for 51% voting to murder the other 49 is not a gift. That's still just murder, even if it is democratically representative murder. In other words, government has no inherent value. Democracy has no inherent value. These things only have value to the extent that they serve and protect a higher value, the rights of the individual. Chief among those, the right to think and to believe and to say whatever you damn well please. That freedom is the actual greatest gift endowed to us by our Creator. The closest gift we humans can offer each other is just the basic value of respecting it, even for kooks, even for conspiracy theorists, even for the hateful and the harmful. All of which could be rationales to ban Obama's speech itself off the internet, but aren't, precisely because Obama enjoys a benefit he refuses to extend to others. If it's rights for me, but not for thee, you can save your democracy talk, because this clearly is not about equality of the individual. Some speech is more equal than others, because some people are more equal than others. That is the single premise that cleans up this mess of an argument immediately. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on Gab. That is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to coming out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it. Goodbye.